welcome to the Dev Insight Show. So the show after the patch where you get to ask the devs questions through the Catalyst, which is me. I'll be reading them in chat. They have chat in front as well. So ask your questions about the patch. And if you say something dumb, it won't get asked. So it's gonna be
that is how it works.
The rules
usually
are very clear.
It's very simple. So ask whatever you want. I'm going to start out because we've got stuff that I think is really interested in. The last thing we showed off was the Camelot King Maui skin for their Worlds performance. So did either of you, like, who was like writing the
That was the Lermster.
Yes.
So when you put in Dave's like end call, like did you consider what that's going to do to like his ego?
He messaged me about it yesterday because he made a tweet about it. It was so sweet. Honestly, like he was just so happy.
For those of you who don't know Dave, when I say that, I mean he'll have like a normal human ego and not be down on himself. Yeah,
Right. Yeah, you would think that guy is an egomaniac. He is actually the
opposite.
egotistical person of all time.
That is Mifflin unironic. Like he loves that call. He
Yeah.
brings it up all the time. And for the first 6 months this year, probably still now, it just doesn't happen as often because Dave's not in the workplace. But if Mifflin referenced it, Dave thought he was making fun of him. And it's like, no, like I genuinely love it. It was really good.
Yep.
I'm excited to see that. So thanks for putting that in there.
Yeah, that was like the whole thing with writing that voice pack was like how many little like esports references can we put in there? Like we've got even some ones like that are kind of like tongue in cheek a little bit where it's like he has a directed taunt to Cupid that's like, oh, that's what going stupid means. And I'm like, I was like, can I say that? Like, is that mean? I was trying to write that like the least mean way possible to be like, oh, I want to make nods to like players that they competed against and defeated, and they have like references to like even the Titans couldn't stop me, like you think your silly little Ravens are so good or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of like little sly references here or there that I hope are in good faith, good spirit that reference like all those like journey that they took throughout the whole thing.
It's like a spiritual successor, I guess, of like the NRG skin, which has like the I'm a race car, where it's like that's such a weird, like if you're playing that now and you literally did not watch Smite Esports in that year, you're probably like
sense.
what
ice cream for the Yorm skin, where it was just like Aurora just likes ice cream, so he just says ice cream when he
I feel like the last time we did one of these, by the way, I think it was me, you, and Clumsy instead of Aggro, and I think we did spend a lot of time talking about Andes, so I'm gonna avoid ice cream.
No, I think I was here.
Maybe you were.
You were here,
Andes,
and we all went afterward too.
Yes,
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
right. Because there was like a meeting, and you were all like, "We don't need to do that meeting." You're like, "Let's just do the meeting at Andes."
Yes.
So ice cream always comes back. I think we have our first question to actually pull up from chat. That's not just from me. So big fan. I was wondering if anyone had a birthday today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Studio Ghost 123. Someone does have a birthday today.
Ooh.
It's this guy. It's Gormiser's
Hey.
30th birthday.
This has been plotted.
Gore, welcome.
I was genuinely thinking, I was
the
like, oh, we
club.
don't have a broadcast. It's just like Dev Insight. Oh my God, there's like a one-up mushroom on it.
For anyone who doesn't know, this is Hindu Man. He's the savage. He's a savage guy. That's how people know him.
Yeah,
It's like
he's
he
the
says
savage, yeah.
stuff. It's like kind of his bit. It's like his brand, so to speak.
Was that good? Good icing.
It's okay, yeah. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I did the decorating.
You did the decorating?
Not bit.
I really
It's
liked it.
actually pretty nicely decorated.
I was genuinely certain. I was like, yeah, this isn't gonna happen.
Yeah, there you go. We got, of course, you know we got you.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Welcome to the Old Man Club.
Yeah.
You now, everything Lermy says, you'll be like, what does that mean? Because she's
Yeah, I'll see you
boomer.
guys in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Mifflin
It's good.
will very often and has very often, he's 25.
Yes.
Continually says he's pushing 30.
Yes.
And he
I
said
don't
that-
do that
He does
for the
not.
Yeah,
record.
does
yeah.
not.
So because you're a normal human being, Lermy, as it turns out. Because it was like 2 weeks ago, we're at dinner, and he says that, and I'm like, no, I'm legitimately pushing 30, bro. You can't be saying this next to
Yep.
me. But thank you, everyone. That one. Hey, thank you, everyone in chat. I see you all saying happy birthday. I saw someone say,
Shout out
can you
Gore.
sing happy birthday to Gore? You don't have to do that.
I won't. No.
And if it makes you, that one person in chat who asked that, feel better, my friends last night, we were playing a game and we were all in using the in-game chat, and immediately midnight hit and they started singing it. So that was
funny. I
That's
like
so
that.
very
fun.
nice.
Yep.
Which, you know what? Since we're talking about me, that can include some other things that are in the battle pass, which is we have a bunch of caster announcer packs.
Yeah.
So for those of you out there, it's on the website, like Mifflin's, mine, J-Max, and Trelly's. And so did y'all listen to any of them?
No,
And
I
which
have not
one's your
heard.
favorite
I've
and why is
seen
it
the
mine?
scripts. I have not heard them though.
I didn't even look at the scripts. No. What's your favorite line you did out of it?
For a death, I think I had, let me go grab my bagpipes, like for the funeral,
Yeah.
because you're dead.
Great. I don't like that one nearly as much. I was like, yeah, I was yes anding, and then I was like, wait, no. But yes.
I sent a screen cap to Katie when I wrote them because I was like bouncing all of it off of her because I was like, I want to make sure that these like hit and are funny as I think they are.
Right.
And I think the reply to all of my "you've died" calls are like, that was cyberbullying. She's like, that's just me.
that is just you for sure. No, I'm excited to rock all 4 of yours, and
Put it on rotation.
yeah, it's gonna be really good. I bet.
Oh, yeah. All I know is that when I was recording mine, I remember we had in our work Discord something popped up that just said, "Is someone yelling in the studio right now?"
That's the right way to do it.
I was doing pentakill calls.
Yeah, you got it.
And then I had to go cast after that.
Oh boy, I hope you were practicing your diaphragm.
I was drinking a lot of water too.
Attaboy.
It was a rough throat day for that one.
Yep.
Also, Iadios, I'm going to say it like that. So that their birthday's a week away. So happy early birthday to
happy
you.
early birthday.
And I think we have another question that's not just me trolling. So I wonder if Agro remembers how to say the name of Maui's hook.
So this is my boy Davion. Davion helped a lot with he's an Olympian member. He's a native Hawaiian. Was it good? Mm-hmm. Or was it really bad? Or you just realized the chewing?
I thought it was.
Oh yeah, okay. I was
And I
like,
realized I'm right
the
next to the
hand went
microphone.
straight to your mouth, and I was like, is it really good or really bad? Like, what is?
Come on,
happening?
ASMR for the stream.
I'm not even trying to buy time, although I did
yummy,
have to
though.
think like at the time, what's it? What is like?
You've got
do
it
I
on your
remember?
arm.
I do. I have the Maui tattoo, and it's Manaya Kalani is what I believe. It's either Manaya Kalani or Manai I Kalani. I forget if I'm adding an extra syllable there, and I can't remember if it's. I think it has to do with the sky. I forget. I've had to.
He
like,
did Lasso
try
the
to-
Sun with it.
Yeah,
I've heard.
he did. But very intimately familiar with the lore of him gaining the hook and all that kind of stuff. But I hope I did that right, Davion. Big shout out to him, the boy Cliff, absolute beast.
Yeah, it said
So
you
I
got it.
Yes, dude, let's go.
They said mahalo.
Yes, I can't wait. I can't wait to see you there, Cliff. I can't wait, man.
I think the only phrase that I've remembered and can keep from that is Mali Kaliki Maka, which is the Merry Christmas, right?
Yep.
And it's because there's so many Christmas songs with that. But it's too early for that, so we can't talk
Yep.
about that.
It is November, just so we're clear.
Yeah, no, it is November, but it's before Thanksgiving in November.
Yes.
And so everyone has a different stance on that. And it is totally related to Smite for us to talk and ask
Yeah.
about exactly that. So, Lermy, your stance on Christmas music before Thanksgiving.
Here's the thing that I think is really funny. I'm actually Jewish, so I don't celebrate Christmas like throughout my childhood because
Sure.
I was raised in a fully Jewish household.
Sure.
So it's always been like kind of this phenomenon to me about like Christmas
You're like,
music
what's
that I'm
the deal
like,
with this?
what's going on, everybody? Why is my radio not like the same as it normally is? It's like November 7th that I'm hearing Mariah Carey going off. Like,
Yep.
what's happening? But
Yep.
I think personally that December is the month for the Christmas holiday.
yeah.
For really whatever holiday that you want to celebrate, regardless of, if you actually religiously celebrate it or not. Like,
sure.
I'll celebrate Christmas with my friends. Like,
Yeah, of course.
it's a lot of fun. But I think it has its own place, you know? Just like, Thanksgiving and Halloween, although for me, Halloween is all year, so it's kind of like, whatever you want it to be.
Sure.
Aggro. This is
Yeah.
it's not going to be a great take or a bad take, by the way. Aggro only has hundreds or zeros.
Yeah, they're scalding hot. Here's my take. I think Christmas lights are immediately acceptable November 1st.
Okay.
Christmas music needs to wait
Yeah.
until after Thanksgiving. But I'm never going to judge
could-
anyone for Christmas lights.
You could tell me Christmas lights are like a year-round thing
I'd be
because you didn't want to
stoked.
take them down. Like, it's literally all I could imagine.
Yep, I'd be stoked. I love Christmas lights. They just make me feel happy inside.
They're cozy.
They are
Kind of like, I mean, at what, most decorative places now would just call them like fairy lights, and you
Yeah.
can change the way they look slightly, but like
yeah, they bang.
they're the same general gist.
Yep.
Now I'll ask an actual question regarding Smite. And this one's just coming from me, which is really, with Fenrir and with Ymir, you had pre-fire, whether it was speeding up the brutalize or the pre-fire time decrease for Ymir. So I'm kind of curious, like when you're looking at changes for gods like that, and like that's the change that comes up, how do you start that conversation instead of like cooldown or damage or mitigations or whatever it happens to be that's otherwise attached to it?
So it's kind of like twofold. There's like two pathways you get there. You kind of like follow a flow chart and they kind of end up at the same spot. So the first option is like, we're like, well, this just feels like the right thing to do. If Ymir needs a buff, let's give it to his 2, because his 2 is clearly the thing that, might need the most help. That's just the instance that we got there for Ymir.
Yep.
There's like the other hand where it's like, Fenrir kind of needs something. Can we do this? Is this even like a possibility? Because a lot of times we don't know. These are old gods.
Yeah. Yes.
Before both of our times designing gods, working on balance even. So a lot of times it's experimentation and like seeing, okay, this could be a possibility. Does this even work? Does the animation flow? Does
Right.
it break any effects? Does it break sounds? Because, you never know with the old characters that are from, way back when, if it will actually work in that regard. So we kind of like give ourselves options and we say, this would be nice if this works, but if it doesn't, we have these other backup plans. So
Yeah.
essentially we give ourselves like this whole like kind of list of options and we're like, let's test this thing because it's the cool thing. It'll feel really fun, feel really nice, make the game smoother, things of that nature. But if it doesn't work, we've got backup plan B and C and all the way to Z sometimes if necessary.
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of characters that we look at and go, well, if we could, we'd do this. We'd change this, and a lot of times we can because we're in a position to do that. A lot of times we can't because it requires a lot of help from other teams who are budgeted out for other things, whatever it may be. And Fenrir is a good example of that, where it's like, we know brutalize being hard to get all your damage off in the late game is the core problem for damage Fenrir, right? What are our options to make that better without, if we just gave it scaling, if he finds you alone at level 11 and he's maxing it, you're dead. If we just give him more protections, then he's just bruiser Fenrir. There's no perfect balance change period in my opinion. There's always a negative. But it was like, I wish we could just speed it up, and then we were like, well, we can. I don't think it'll work, but we can try.
We did not think it would work. Straight up, we went into it like in a balance meeting. I'm like, I can do this like really quick on the side real fast.
Yep.
I changed the number really quick in our database, loaded it up, and it worked. And the
worked out of the
shock
box.
on all of our faces, and
We're like, yo.
that worked. Like,
And so it's 0.5 in between each tick of damage, right? It takes 0.5 seconds. It did take him 0.5. So we're going, okay, it's 0.5. Let's see what 0.4. Like that's our natural place where we would do it. It was like instant. Like it felt so fast, and we all like kind of looked at it. And we were like, we can't.
No,
do
we
that.
can't do that.
Like that's too fast, right? Like that's too much of a change. So that's how we landed on like the 0.45, where it's like, okay, this feels noticeably different, but it isn't like that was
not
one of those
crazy.
Yeah, what have we done? Like, what have we created? Type of scary things.
Becomes like a monster of its own.
Exactly. We've done that plenty of times. It's not always easy to tell ahead of time, but in that one, we were like, we can't do that.
Yeah, there are some that are like very obvious that it's like, oh no, that's too far. We've done too much.
We've gone too deep.
Yep.
And other times we're like, you know what? Let's bring it to playtest, see how it feels, and then adjust from there. And with this one specifically, we were like, we really want to test this, make sure this feels good. We're not like scaring any like Fenrir players or things like that. And I think it has felt very good, actually.
I have to give a shout out, A, because you buffed Ymir on my birthday, so that's awesome. But B, because all of the other dev notes are usually like these well-written.
Oh, yeah.
And
That was all
Ymir's
there.
is just
So good.
What do you
written
think Ymir
as
wrote that
Ymir.
Oh yeah, Ymir wrote that one.
Ymir think it get colder outside.
Yep.
And you know what? Ymir smash you like pink. Like it's just,
So
I
good.
love it.
That was I legitimately laughed out loud whenever I read that. That was really good.
And unless I misheard, I believe we have a question lined up
Hey, all right.
that we can throw out. And if I did mishear, this is actually the one I was going to ask. So this is perfect. What is the tipping point when we are seeing classes and characters go off role that cause like dev action? Which I'm assuming this is inspired by all the mages that were in
Yeah.
solo lane. Like, when does it say when you go no more? We must stop this.
Yeah, I think we don't have a specific number that when it exceeds, anything, a bunch of alarms go off.
Yeah.
But
It goes 51%. The
yeah,
entire
like
room
the whole,
turns red.
Yeah, red. Exactly.
The alarms are going off.
Yeah, it's something where we look at stats multiple times a week. We heavily review SPL, pick rate, usage rate, win rate, all that kind of stuff. Anytime a class is not getting the majority of the play in its typical role, we would be having discussions about it. We would have already been having discussions about it by that point.
Yeah, the other thing to kind of consider in that as well is like, what is the community perception of it? Because a little bit is fun. Like, at the very beginning of the meta, I was like, oh, this is neat. Like, we're getting little mages in here. And then it happened game after game after game. And eventually you're like, yeah, so where are the warriors at?
Yeah, if it were 75%, 25%, like 75% warriors, 25% mages, if those mages are overperforming, if the play style is unhealthy or out of line, then we would address those. But if it was just like, if you build your team comp around it and 25% of the time you just happen to pick a mage and they kind of do the same role and they're doing their thing, that's no skin off my back.
That's no problem.
I think that's really cool. I think that you can look at our history of balance decisions and see that we have basically unilaterally encouraged flexibility across different roles. There are also a lot of examples where gods like Serket or Longshen, they have gotten nerfed because they have been too good at those alternative roles. Yeah. But overall, I think we as a design team are very happy when gods are flexible and roles are flexible. We think that keeps it fresh and unique. But yeah, we never want to see picking a warrior be the wrong choice objectively for solo lane.
Yeah.
And you can't ever really get to 100% wrong choice, whatever. But between community sentiment and data, it was clear that mage solos were overperforming.
Yeah, and it also didn't really help that we didn't have bonus balance this last patch, which is just kind of
deal.
The way that the schedule works out. That tends to make players a little bit more antsy around the changes because, again, we are in such a fast cycle that change is always coming, and it does feel nice to play with change, but you can tell, like, sometimes when there isn't enough change, and that also can reflect sometimes on our decisions and our, like, quantity of things that we're putting out and changing, that is also really important for us to keep in mind when we're going forward. So like if you're seeing patches like that are the 3-week patches or whatever it may be, that is another thing that we have to keep in mind in that regard, is what is going to be the thing that's going to be settled for these 3 weeks or whatever it might be.
It's also really interesting to think about because, like, at least for me, it feels like, and this is just the way live service updates work in general, but like the game that you would have played in like 10-1 and the game that you would be playing like right now on live and
Very
that you'll be playing in 3 weeks, right? It's really cool seeing like the different metas, and part of that was like the seasons, right? We were bringing in massive changes throughout the year.
And that kind of like ties back to this whole thing about like balance, and how balance is kind of like this fake sort of idea that it's like a game has to be perfectly balanced for it to be
that
fun.
doesn't exist.
It's just not
It's
a thing.
fake.
And like the thing about the cycle too that people always go back to say, like they say it in a negative way, that it's like, oh well, now it's a tank meta and then it goes into the ADC meta and then it's a mage meta, and it's like it always happens in this cycle, but that's just because everyone gets to have their time. Every kind of player gets to have their time, and that's not a problem in our eyes. It's just, what is the community ready for? What kind of changes and direction is different than what we just had,
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a lot on our like Titan Forge podcast episode with Clumsy. Highly recommend checking that out. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was so fun.
The goal is not to perfectly balance the game so that we can snapshot, okay, this is balanced, we're not touching it anymore. That's not what anyone would want.
It's fluid.
It has to be mobile and changing, and that's what keeps players interested. And we don't want things to be super overpowered because that's not fun to play against. We don't want things to be super underpowered because that's not fun to play as. But that's why we don't want those to be those things, not because it goes against the holy goal of balance.
Perfect
Like,
balance. Once every single character in the game has 50% win rate, then we get 30 billion players, and then the game is just perfect.
Right,
That's
yeah.
that's not
we
real.
actually get a government fund if we perfectly balance the game because we've perfectly balanced it.
And what's crazy is that I know you have like this golden tome that has the perfect balance
Right.
that was
Yeah.
left
We could do
eons
it.
ago.
Yes.
That we found under one of the pyramids.
Pon wrote it in a fever
Yeah.
dream one day.
He got a vision.
And like all you got to do is just like go in and do it, you know?
But we choose not to.
Yeah, just actively.
It's a very complicated topic, so I don't want it to be like, you know, when we get this feedback, like it's bad feedback
No,
or
that's
anything
that's
like
what
that.
that's
Yeah.
what we want. You know,
Yeah.
we want that feedback for sure.
Exactly.
But like be nice about it.
Yes,
Like,
it's
let's be
more
clear
to
about
say-
that. Be
it's-
nice about it.
It's more to say that the game is intentionally imperfect in the balance so that things can be changed. There's
Yeah.
room for more change because change is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Change is always a new thing for people to learn, a new thing for people to try, and it is a re-engagement point that is a very big part of why people come back every patch.
Yeah, I'm like I'm excited for this one because I can shoot my Vulcanol at my feet and not feel like I'm wasting my Vulcanol. Like immediately, I'm feeling pretty solid about that. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I think we have another question queued up, and the question will be: this is again another one that I was gonna pull out, which gets a little more, I think, kind of nitty gritty into specifics. But fail not hunter only item that has 20 CDR on it. So they're kind of curious why not nerf that to maybe 10 CDR because 20 seems maybe counterintuitive for hunters to have. So what made you look at? I know during the actual patch notes or update show, you had said like, "Hey, this thing does a lot," and so you kind of picked out, does it really need to reduce damage as well?
Yeah.
So what was it, I guess, that kind of made that one stand out over some of the other stats?
So that particular effect, I believe, was inherited from when we removed Poison Star. It like
It got removed off Envenom Deathbringer.
Yes.
It got moved from Poison Star to Envenom Deathbringer, and then off of that.
And we were like, well, we need to have Fail Not at this point, so then we gave it that effect, and we were like, well, addressing everything that it had was like, well, it just has too many things. What's one thing that's like not a crazy thing that we can remove, but that will affect it somewhat, because it is still a fringe item, but I think it's fringe in a cool way, right? The 20% cooldown is a really unique thing that hunters don't really have a lot of access to, so giving them some place to access a bunch of cooldown reduction if they do want to go into that style of build is cool.
Yeah.
Like, that is fun, and it is kind of does work with the item in the fact that, you know, that cooldown affects your ultimate cooldown, which then affects the passive of Fail Not. So it all goes together, right? So the less cooldown that item has, the less synergistic that item is in general, and you lose a little bit of that niche. So kind of we were thinking, what is the, not least impactful, but what is an impactful change that will not destroy this item, but will be, you know, a change that can bring it down a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the point of it being the only hunter item with 20 CDR, I feel like that's a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's how it's identified by the chatter. You know, like this is the only hunter item with 20 CDR. That's why it has it. That's its identity. That's its identity, right? And we can certain. You know, there are plenty of instances where we take away the unique identity strength because it proves to be too powerful. But I think that's something that we've really tried to focus on recently is maintaining or enhancing identity instead of just trying to make everything a little bit more well-rounded. We should make things strong in their niche. And we like that Fail Not has its niche and is strong in that niche.
Yeah.
We're gonna reveal that for some reason, like any update to Smite, they all blend together. Maybe it's just because of esports, right? And doing it, but like I can't remember when it happened. I want to say it was this year, but the last time I said that, it happened in season 8. So we'll see.
We've had things like that happen in balance meetings.
But I do remember that, like, very specifically, sometime in recent history, there was like a go through the item store, like, what is this item's identity? Let's make sure that, like, how many of these have these?
10-1 launch, right?
Oh,
If I remember correctly.
Yes. Okay. So I wasn't crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's still room to do that.
Yeah. But like for things to have their own identity
Yes.
is a good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a
exactly.
good concept.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know, there
Otherwise,
are.
it's all homogenous. I
It's-
can just
it's
buy
tough.
everything all the time forever.
Yeah, it's tough because players don't. The items that are too niche just don't get bought. And sometimes we try and add another stat to make it a little bit more well-rounded, but not totally dilute the identity, and that doesn't always work super well.
Yeah.
I think of like the Bloodforge change as a good
I was
example of
just
that. Yeah, where Bloodforge has always been very niche, has really never been high level meta. It's been in the game since I started playing pre-season 1, and just hasn't been that good. What was that thumbs down?
Oh, is whether or not I wanted someone to take the cake away.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Yeah, you don't have the headphones on. You
I was
didn't
like,
hear. They were like,
am I wrong?
no, not you. That was specifically for
second-guessing
Billy.
myself.
I like having the cake here.
Yeah,
I can't eat it. I keep looking at it and thinking it really looks delicious.
I'm surprised Hindu didn't bring us some forks or something like that. That would have been
could
much
also
nicer.
understand though, and I guess
Well, yeah, it would have been
here the
worse.
option is now there. If we want, we can ask for plates and forks. But
I mean,
would you want to be eating during Dev Insight?
I would be
Post-show.
eating.
I ate
the
that
record.
cookie
Yeah.
and felt 1 bad immediately because I was in front of a mic, and 2 immediately had to go for water because I did not
Well,
consider
it's not very. It's not crunchy.
it was
Well,
oh yeah, that's not crunchy.
That's not
Yeah,
good.
you got a good point. But well, I guess a good cake maybe doesn't dry your mouth out.
yeah.
I don't know.
Anyways,
I had to drink some water.
yeah, we have to try and figure out the line between maintaining identity and also making things appealing to purchase.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Get it all.
it needs a little bit more well-roundedness to get purchased.
Little incentive, push in the right direction.
Yep.
I'm gonna alter this question to fit the thing I want to ask instead, which is just when a god comes out, you've been playing it and you've got a mindset. This is what this god's meant to be.
Yeah.
And then a week later, none of that is happening. It's absolutely
gosh.
completely different. How do you how does that, I guess, feel from your perspective, and also how do you then deal with that for future changes?
It's strange. I'm trying to think of a really good example of when this
I
happened.
can't really think of
I feel like it doesn't happen in live. It happens internally
Yes.
a ton.
So much, especially in the early stages.
Yes.
There were stages I can remember with Ishtar, especially, where I was like, she's gonna be this basic attack hunter, and she's gonna really play around this switching of her basic attack style. And then it was like, no, actually, she needs to do other things. And I was like, oh, okay, let's work around that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of that feedback early, which is very helpful for us, because the earlier it is, the easier it is for us to change things, which is both good and bad, because it's like, well, do we pursue this direction that's not really fully done yet, or
Yep.
do we shift? And it's always that question of where do we actually make this decision, because it's hard, right? Because
Yep.
it's not done at that point.
Yep.
You don't have all the full effects in the sounds or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's
really tough.
it's a very hard question to work around in that moment.
It's really interesting because when you play your god for the first time in that prototype stage,
It's so weird.
it's very weird.
It's very weird.
Sometimes things feel exactly like how you wanted. Sometimes you're like, I know that I've made a grave. This is not going to work.
Yes, the paper prototype to the actual gameplay prototype is
Vastly
a wake-up call.
Have either of you had a god at this point where what you wrote down and what you got in that first iteration
Yes.
were 1-to-1, it was exactly what you
I was gonna say the
Like what we
opposite.
released?
Oh, yeah.
None of my gods
No.
have had the exact same kit from paper to release.
Yu Huang and Charon, I think, were the two that changed the most for me.
Yeah.
Charon's ultimate is so different now than it was
Yes,
going to be before.
it was really different.
Charon's ultimate initially at the very first paper design was going to be 3 swings of small waves, and they were just going to be fears that you could pull back. And then we had that as the prototype, and the unanimous feedback was, this is really disorienting. And I was like, oh my god, how do I fix this? What do I do? So eventually we were changing the size of the projectiles, the number of the projectiles, and then we got to the point where it felt really good, where it was one really big projectile.
Yep.
And then the point that it clicked was like, oh my god, what if we made this global?
Yeah.
And then it became this
Made it bigger.
really, really cool ability. It didn't have the trail in the back either that gave
Yep.
your teen things. So just adding these small bits, not even changing them, but even adding small things to them that have a really big impact can be really fun too.
Yeah.
I know that happened with Yu Huang as well, where initially he was designed to have no CC
Yep.
on his 2. And it just made him so hard to confirm anything off of
Yeah.
it. I was like, he's got to have CC somewhere. He needs something. Let's give him a rudeness low. And then it just feels like this really nice 2-1 combo that is super snappy now. So that change was such a big pivot point for him, where he went from feeling like, I can't do anything, I have no agency, to I can do it all myself.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Yeah, it was. It's such a weird experience too, because giving someone else the god for the first time, and you for me, the way that the process works from initial kit concepts to first prototyping is months in between. So I'm thinking about how to Maman is the best example I have. I'm thinking about how I'm going to be playing Maman for 3 months before anyone else even hears what she's doing, basically. Then it's another couple months after that that someone can find it, she's ready to be play tested by someone who isn't like looking for all of these really specific things.
Yeah.
I remember Chaos, I think, was one of the first other play testers to touch Maman. And I was like, yeah, so how were you thinking about playing around your passive? And he's like, oh, I really wasn't. But my damage was really bad. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know, I wanted you to like really think about your passive. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I didn't. And it didn't really work. And I was like, and it's a really hard crossroads when you're in that position because your iteration time isn't super long once you get to that stage.
Yeah.
And you have to make those we have to make pretty definitive calls after.
They have to go like
2,
pretty
3
snappy. Like
playtests?
if you're making those calls like in our position, it has to come
Quickly.
like within the first 2-3 weeks, or we're kind of locked out of that stuff because
Right.
teams
We're dictating
are scheduled
dozens of people.
months in
you know?
advance as well. So they're like, we have this many weeks to do the animation, the FX, whatever it is. And if we're at that time, we're basically asking them to like leave their schedule behind and get behind their schedule. So it has to be like either a really, really important change that we are like uber confident that this is going to be a great change, or we have to do it within that time frame.
Yep.
And that's just business. That's just how it is.
Yeah. It's so it's like, you know, does that mean the loop doesn't work? Does that mean the kit doesn't work? Or does that mean that he just didn't get enough information ahead of time because, you know, everything is so temp to focus on that? And so I remember I had him play her again the next day, which normally we kind of go in a little bit more of a rotation. And I was like, think about your passive the whole game. I want you to come into this like you're scrimming in season 2, one-tricking your Giannis. I literally told him that. I was like, think about it like you're scrimming this character for the first
Teleport
time
Jonqui.
and really think about utilizing this passive, because I need to know if this loop doesn't work or if it's just about how we're presenting it. And he came back and was like, I totally got it. It felt so much better. Like it worked so much more cleanly. And so it's like, for me, I play it, it feels like it works. Then someone else touches it and it's like, yeah, I don't think this is really working. And it's like, does that mean that the idea isn't great, that it needs changes, or that I've just had 6 months of run up that this person has had 6 minutes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's tough.
That's the other thing too, is sometimes you're in a room like with the thing that you're working on for so long that you just don't know like
yeah, you lose
actually
the
what it
forest for
feels
the
like.
trees very easily.
And that happens sometimes as well with like the difficulty of gods, because that's another thing that comes up a lot, is like we have to make sure that it's accessible to a certain extent, right? Like it's okay if there are things to master on gods, but a god shouldn't be like so reliant on a mechanic that if you don't know that mechanic, then you just can't play the god basically.
Right.
And that was something that came up for me. The one example that I can think of is like Ishtar 2.
Yep.
Previously was very, very hard to hit. It was a smaller number of lightning shots down from the sky, and the feedback was like, I can't hit this thing. I don't know why, but I can't hit this thing.
Yep.
And so we had to do a lot of like number crunching on that, FX adjusting to make it feel better, and then it went up to 4, and then all of a sudden it was clicking with people. They're like, yes, I feel like I can hit this, I can clear the wave with this. And I was like, phew, okay. You don't have to have like uber mechanical adapting level geniuses to actually hit this stuff, so we're chilling now.
Yeah.
It also, I guess, puts into light, because like, you know, we've been open about this, but like you'll have meetings where you go around to different departments where it's like, hey, here's this god, and brainstorm some things, and then whether or not that ends up going anywhere, I know ours get out of hand is the polite way to describe it.
It's fun though. It's a good time.
It's a I think very useful 30 minutes of an hour, and then the other 30 is TBD on the day. But like it's from that to like when you're actually like, okay, now you can play it. Like there were times I'd be like, I've got this meeting, I'm really worried, like I got to make sure I don't say like the name of this god, I don't mention this meeting anywhere, I don't want to spoil anything on broadcast. But then like 2 weeks later I've completely forgotten about them, and by the time we get to the point where it's like either playtest or straight up just release, I go, oh yeah, that guy. Like I completely forgot about Charon. I know we had conversations about Charon because I remembered Boys in the Boat.
Boys in the Boat. Yeah, I was gonna say, I know it's coming because Boys in the Boat was a heavy theme for Maui.
It was for Maui too. Like a month,
obviously
it stuck around for a little bit. I think
Yeah.
even some after that, like I can't remember who it was after that, but I do distinctly remember more conversations where we were trying to shoehorn in Boys with the Boat.
Yeah.
similar to blinds and executes, which also always
We
get
meme
mentioned.
those a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I remember during the Martikaras one, like Mifflin was on like a
He really-
train or something. He was like, "What about a melodious roar?"
Oh yeah, melodious.
And
roar.
he
Classic.
just kept as long as he got the word melodious in there, he was real.
Was that at the same time that the ghastly breath bit started?
I think so. That
They're
feels
so
like it went
similar,
hand in
right?
hand.
Like that it feels appropriate.
He probably he heard ghastly breath and then realized, wait a minute.
He's like, what if I just had a whole ability that
Like, just
was built
melodious
off
roar.
Melodious roar. Yeah, that, I mean, it is
he would
funny.
pitch different things for it. He'd be like, "Okay, so the third time this is like come up.
It's
He's
still
like, the
melodious
third,
roar."
Okay, it's melodious roar, but this time it's a melodious roar, not a roar that's also melodious."
Yes, yeah, that's the type of
Yeah.
top-notch brainstorming. We get
That's
out
why I
of
said it's a
Caleb
30.
Mifflin.
It's guaranteed good 30 minutes, and then
And then we get a little
TBD.
bit to the crap posting, but
I will say with Maman, I remember I started. We were in the meeting, but it was much more bare than they normally are because there's a lot of people in them. I remember I looked at you and I said, "Aggro, do not write down what I'm about to say."
you said that to me too.
I dropped it in the first 2 minutes, and then I said, "And I'm sorry that's the energy I brought at the very beginning of this meeting." I had
Did I
to
write it
apologize.
down?
You didn't. You started to, and then when the phrase I uttered, you closed your eyes, nodded, took your hands away from the keyboard, and
Yep.
said, "All right."
Yep, fair enough. Yeah,
we have
that's
fun.
fair.
We have fun here designing gods.
I felt
And-
so bad.
It's always cool because we have a lot of ideas that change so much.
Oh yeah.
And that's the other thing too is like you may hear about the draft abilities that we're talking about here for other gods, but let it be known that almost every single time it is so rare for the draft on paper ability to be what ends up in the game. Like even if
Yeah.
it feels like, oh well that's just similar to that. Like we also come to those conclusions and we're like, we need to do something about this. Like
Yep.
it can't release like that, you know, like it needs to change. Yes,
Yep.
this needs to change. And so we do. And then it ends up in a really fun spot. Like I think that a lot of the times when we hit that moment, we know it. We're like, this is it. This is the change that feels right, and this is gonna work now.
Yes, there's always a point where I am concerned that, holy crap, I've made the worst god of all time. This is terrible. It's not working. I don't know what to do. And then someone will suggest a change.
And then
It's been
you just have,
chaos
a
2 out of
brain
the 3
blast.
times. Yeah, Clumsy saved Maui. Chaos saved Ishel and Maman. Where all of a sudden it just all clicks. But it never. But and maybe it just has something about where I'm starting. But
It's just a hard thing to do.
it's really
a
hard to
village.
one shot it for sure.
Especially
maybe one day.
so late in the pipeline, like we're at.
Yeah.
There have been so many great designers before us as well that we get to learn from, obviously, but
Yeah.
that we also have to follow in their footsteps a little
Yeah.
bit.
And do something different. Then.
Yes, and there's so many gods in the game, like 128 at this point.
Yep.
And it's like we have to make something different than 128 times 4 minimum or 5 minimum. It's a little bit crazy to think about that. So, people will sometimes talk about how this is just this plus this, and it's like,
Right.
yeah, that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
It can be real fun. And also probably really, really challenging and makes
Yeah,
me thankful that that's not something I'm tackling.
Especially if it's the things that you're describing are both individually fun abilities that people like.
Yeah.
Is it so bad to have,
To have
more
two
of those
real fun things on
Yeah.
top of each other?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
I like this idea actually.
Yeah.
I know we have more questions
Yeah.
that
Let's
we
go.
can tackle and see where we can get into. So with the return to a standard arena after a lengthy period of Underworld Arena with the twist of the Pirate class and the FG, will there be future experimental or spicy changes to Arena? I'm going to expand this to any... Oh, I guess it says as well as for non-Conquest game modes. I didn't even have to expand it. They did it.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're definitely open to. We also have to be wary that a lot of times those non-conquest modes are more casual friendly.
Yeah.
And we don't want to add a ton of complexity to modes where that complexity will not be welcomed. Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult as well because when it comes to the casual modes, there tend to be more people that stick to their casual mode
Right.
and don't really go exploring out of the box. Whereas
Right.
Conquest players are a little more flexible; they're more willing to go and play other things. But for instance, your Arena players will stick to Arena, your Assault
Yep.
players will usually stick to Assault. Whatever.
And their real opinion about it too.
Yeah.
You ask an Assault player if they like Arena, they will give you a full detailed reason why Assault is better, and vice versa. They will get in your face.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not to say that we would never do things like that, but we have to feel like they are obvious adds to the
Right.
mode that people are happy with, that we can be excited about. And I think that it is something that is cool, and we do want to keep exploring. Obviously, we can't really talk about anything if we're exploring anything at this point, but
Yeah.
it's things to think about for the future. And we definitely want to keep entertaining the non-conquest enjoyers.
Now all I can think of I think it was last year, we did like a this or that with a bunch of the players where we just asked them, like pizza or pasta or something like that.
Right.
One was assault or arena, and no matter what they answered, they looked at me with a disgusted like that I would even
Why would you even
insinuate that the other belongs on that list.
Right.
And what was funny is it was like dead even by the end of it. You had just as many who preferred one as the other.
Yep.
But like they were affronted that I would even pose the question to them.
Yeah.
And I think it started with the Ravens because they were all at the
Well,
time
but,
like
yeah, I mean,
assault
there's-
mains.
Yeah, of course. He's like the assault main.
Well, I see someone say I respect you, assault mains. I'm not reading the rest just because I don't know where it's gonna go.
Fair.
I'd be excited though, I actually think it's worth mentioning because like the arena fire giant thing, but like even the current assault map, right, with the little orbies that heal you that I don't know the name of.
Healing orbs.
Oh yeah, well
just
that's
little guys.
man. Sometimes things are right on the nose. I thought they'd have something fancy, but like that didn't used to exist. Like it didn't used to zigzag the way it does. Like
Yeah.
there are changes to that map that have happened over time that like maybe would have been like, hey, this is like maybe a short time gimmick, and then it's like actually that's kind of real good. Maybe
Yeah.
we keep that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how
That's
a lot
happened
of
with
those
a
things
lot of
start.
places,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's we feel like we can get significant value without a lot of risk here, and if it's well
figure it
received,
out.
then why would we remove it?
And I think we do have at least one more queued up because it was 2 at the time. So what are your opinions on long seasons versus more regular updates now that you've had the experience? So I guess year 10, how many seasons? I guess this is the 5th,
fifth
right?
one,
Oh my
yeah.
God. Versus,
Yeah, you're
hey,
telling
here's
us.
season 9. But you can do like, because in season 9 you still have those big changes. It just didn't come like as a seasonal, hey, you have to make it a big deal.
Right.
It's an interesting question, right? Because you can come at this 2 different ways. You can come at it like as a player, like what as a player would want to do and would expect, and me as a dev,
Sure.
and how it affects me in my dev cycle. But you can also kind of think of it like as a company as well. Like what is the most engaging like marketing level tactic for these kind of things? I don't really have an answer to that, at least because I'm not privy to that information personally.
Yeah, no, neither
So,
am
as a dev, it has been challenging to continuously try to find the next big thing that's going to top the last season. That is just a challenge that exists no matter what kind of patch cycle type thing that we're in. As a
Right.
player, I find it really intriguing doing the shorter seasons because it does give me this like new fancy meta or mechanic or thing to do or theme or any of these things. So that is
Yeah.
really fun. But I almost do kind of also really enjoy the longer sort of like meta development that goes on sometimes. That can also be really fun. So for me personally, I don't think I have a very strong opinion either way. I think both are fun. They bring different styles of gameplay and development through a season, but there's not one that like really stands out to me personally as being better. Again,
Yeah.
personal opinion.
there are positives and negatives to both
Yeah.
to both sides, I think. I think when I think about this year as a player, or if I were still casting, I think I would really like the fact that this year is divided up into very clear splits on what the meta changes in the middle of a season, but there are stark meta changes
Yeah.
season to season. And from a narrative perspective or a player perspective, that's definitely easier to follow. And when you're going to have something exciting, whereas before it might that mid-season's going to be exciting and how it used to be, and then there will be like a random 9.3 or like 9.5. Great example.
Yeah.
Maybe the most drastic change Smite has ever seen in the middle of just the middle of the year.
Thrown out.
Not the mid-season. Mid-season was 9.7.
Yep.
Which is also big.
Right, which was also massive. It was just at a different time. And so from that perspective, I think that there's a big advantage for the clarity.
Yeah, calling it Season of Souls versus
Right.
9.5. Like
Exactly.
one is obviously like a
Huge
little
difference.
bit easier
Yeah.
to tell like what actually happened during that
Right.
point.
I think that there are also like on the dev side, like when you've got your new season patch and your mid-season patch. Those are your big splash opportunities, and there are other big patches big changes you can make along the way, but those are your targets. There are so many ideas that we have, so many things we want to do, and it's like, man, we have to really choose the one or two that are going to be the best, and that's what's in mid-season, and we'll fit these other ones down the line where we can. And that's like, man, I want to do all of these things, and that's where the multi-season structure is really cool, because we can do we got a lot of crazy stuff done this year.
I kind of can't believe it, honestly.
I know.
The stuff that was on that document in 10.1 to where we are now.
Like laughed at us if we were like, yeah, we're gonna do all this. I'd be like, you and what army? But
this army, woo!
Exactly. It's been very fun to be able to do more splashy things more frequently throughout the year. But that also comes with its downsides of more, meta instability, bigger chances of big misses, all that kind of stuff. So, I think I don't know that I could say definitively one way or the other, but I hope that
they're just different. It's just a different experience.
The analogy, I realize I've somehow gotten myself known for like really weird analogies, which admittedly kind of makes sense when I listen to myself cast. But immediately I could think of like, if you were serving a dish, you're a chef, right? You're putting something out, and this one takes 5 minutes to cook. You're just gonna, it's still fancy, still delicious, but it's quicker, easier. Put it out there. Or like a chili, a stew, or something that's like, hey, I'm going to cook this for 4 hours and let it simmer and see where it goes, like what you start with and where it ends up. Like if you left 10.1 until July, the game would still probably be very different by July, but it'd be different in a different way than all the different
That's something that we talk about sometimes too, is that we're like, is there even enough time to like solve each meta as it comes and goes? Like, probably not, but
I don't think even it, let's look at some of our previous pre-Worlds patches. The meta has never been solved before the Smite World Championship. Yeah. Right? The meta has literally always changed in the middle of the event.
And it's within 2-3 sets. Like that third set, for some reason, it's like, oh, this guy, I didn't even prepare for this god. I don't know his ability names. Like, I gotta go home and study real fast.
Yep. Like I said, I say it a lot. We could totally snapshot the game as it is right now, let players play on it for a year, not a single change. The game would look completely different.
Yeah, like one of the things that I like to think about kind of in that regard is like Smash Melee has been the same way for a decade minimum at this point, and that game still changes year to year.
Which now makes me, this is like the season of Worlds. So what is it in this patch that you think in 2 months now, oh my god, 2 months is going to be like, that's the sleeper, oh my god, no one realized it until now? This is a hard prediction to make, because sometimes it's never
sometimes we're like, that god has to be good, he has to be good, and then we pull up the stats and we're like, oh. that's my favorite bit now. I think that's your favorite bit too, is when I'm like, all right, Max, Innocent Rabbit, our data guy that comes to our balance meetings and like pulls up his fun charts. I'm like, Max, tell me about, I don't know, Ymir. And then he goes, Ymir, you're not gonna like this. And I go, oh no.
She's like, surely he's terrible, and he's like, he's top 5 win rate in the game, and she's like, what is this?
That's
a total
not actually real. The case. That's just made up for illustration.
Trust me, I know. I've played with Ymir players out there. There's no way that guy's top 5 win rate right now.
No, almost. But yeah, it's hard to say for sure. I think Nemesis is my pick.
You feel like Nemesis?
She just is. It's something that we are usually very wary about, but also is kind of unavoidable. Where she's gotten a couple buffs over a not super long period of time, like over just year 10 in general. And we give a god a buff. No one really, it doesn't affect their play rate. We give a god a buff, it doesn't affect their play rate. We give a god a buff, doesn't affect their play rate. We give a god a 4th buff. Now everyone starts playing that god and they're like, yo, this is OP.
They're crazy. That happened to Mulan most recently that I can imagine.
Guan Yu, RDO. You can go down the list of gods that have gotten that treatment where they get buff, no one plays them, buff, no one plays them, buff, no one plays them, buff. super OP, unstoppable.
suddenly-
Yeah.
We nerfed them beyond where they were. They're now worse than where they started,
And they
they're
still get
still
played.
getting played.
And what's funnier to that is you always see, at least I always end up seeing, like, oh my god, I didn't even realize this person did something that changed 6 months ago. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
yeah, I mean that's just it's an inevitable part of the machine.
I feel like
I think
Nemesis
Nem's
is a
a
good
good one.
pick. And I'm gonna go even further, and I'm gonna say that I anticipate for some reason the qualies before Worlds Cthulhu is gonna be obnoxious, and that's
did
gonna
get a buff
herald
recently.
in
Yeah, you got a buff last match.
the Nemesis.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Lasbra, I want to say Lasbra has been playing Nemesis like off and on.
Sino.
Sino's, yeah, you're right. So,
Because we were
you're right.
literally
If I'm
like-
gonna guess anyone's playing something
we were
that's not
looking
meta.
At, we were looking at like the players of like the gods we were buffing. And, like, is this god getting played at all in the SPL? And we were talking about Nemesis because we were like, do we need to? Should we do these Nemesis because her stats were not good, but she was
Terrible.
getting played in the SPL. So we were like, okay, well, who's actually doing it? Like, is everyone playing Nemesis? And we were like, and it was like Sino again.
Yep.
Sino. And
You'll
I was
never
like,
guess who
well,
else.
Yeah, we
it's all
we
the
got
Sino.
pretty big Nem buffs. We're like, oh man, can we even do it still? Like, she got picked 3 times, and then it was like, oh, it was just Sino 3 times.
Yep.
We're probably fine.
And you never
Especially
know.
because Sino is such an eclectic
He's just a
god.
Sino.
Yeah,
He's just gonna pick
because
him
you
play whatever
hear the
he wants.
Nemesis, he played Bologna Jungle, and I think he won with that pick as well.
Yep.
So like, sometimes it's just a Sino diff, right?
Yep.
You
Yeah.
can't you can't account
Yeah,
for all of
Been
it.
Brooks Maddie, like it just happens.
It just happens. But yeah, I think for me, I would have said Ishtar, but she started to show up again, which she hasn't changed at all. And
Yeah,
yet here she
if she's
is.
showing up now, it's not happening in 2 months.
So we're gonna keep an eye on it. Again, we still have multiple points of balance that we can have. Again, we got bonus
yeah.
balance coming up before Worlds. So again, if anything gets out of hand, we will be
Yeah.
able to adjust beforehand. But
Yep.
like I said in the update show, we are not trying to shake up too much before
Yeah.
Worlds. There might be a couple buffs here and there, nerfs here and there where needed, but nothing insanity like, oh my god, I'm changing my entire build path, the week before Worlds. Like, we're not trying to do that.
And what's great, this is going to be awesome. Are you ready for this? Is that you get to see this patch played with the top 6 competitive SBL teams. If you tune in next Thursday,
What a plug.
that is November 16th through the 19th, which will be the Road to Worlds playoffs. It's going to be the qualifiers. 4 teams immediately are going to be going to Worlds from that event. So, like, you're going to want to make sure you tune in to know A, who's going, B, their seeding, because like they get to choose their opponents from the bottom 4 teams,
Yep.
and then C, like what gods you should be playing on the new patch.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
by Sunday, in theory, they'll have figured out at least the most recent changes.
Yeah.
And then by the time we hit anything in December, where we have some like SCC like qualifiers, things like that, everything that we learned next week will be different. So it'll be really, really fun. And then by the time we get to the January qualifiers, which is just literally 2 weeks later, but it's 2 vacation weeks, which are real long time.
Yep.
Everything will be different, and then somehow it'll change at Worlds again too.
Yeah.
So you got to stay on your toes, but it's going to be really fun. But Aggro, Laramie, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for answering
having us.
questions. Of course, chat, if you didn't have yours answered, they might not like what I'm about to say, but you could just tag them on Twitter if you really think
You
that
can.
if you think it's worthwhile, because otherwise you might just get blocked. So you got to think real heavily about it.
We're not going to block you unless you're rude.
And
Yeah,
rude.
that's the thing. Is it?
Okay.
if
I
you
might
bring
not
us-
respond, but
We
this
read.
dude has like a
I'll check
baby,
it.
bro.
Yeah.
He's got stuff to do.
yeah.
We read basically everything.
Yes, I
we just
read
don't have
literally
enough time to respond to everything.
I was very surprised with you because during the update show, you straight up were like, "Yeah, I've read like every Mammon
Every single one. that's ever
like
been
thread."
It's part of our job. We just have to know what the community perception is, right? And what better way to do it than reading Reddit, Twitter, even Facebook sometimes. I'll go on there and check out what they're having because they have
That's
their
deep,
own.
bro.
YouTube comments I look at.
Those
Twitch
guys are mean to
chats.
me. I don't like reading them.
Yeah. No, they aren't the nicest group.
I
I'd
opened
say.
one, and I wasn't even looking for the YouTube comment. I opened the video because I was just like, "Oh, I'm going to grab like a clip for my reel," and the top comment was like "fire core" or something, and I was
What
like,
the heck?
"Okay, man." I was just like, I thought I did real good. I was coming here for my job.
YouTube comments are a lot like my opinions. They are either extremely cruel and
Yeah.
mean, like the 0 out of 10,
Or they're
they're incredibly wholesome.
hitting
Like
the notes.
just they're so nice. There's no in between on YouTube. It's just the total polar opposites there.
Yeah.
It is. I will admit, I didn't think about how different like the opinions would be, though, right? Because
Between each platform, they're
Oh,
so
they're
different.
very different.
They're so
I can
different.
imagine, and man,
And even the people that don't like make any comments on any
Yeah.
of that, like that I'll run into in my rank games, and they're like, "Hey, Lermy, can you nerf this?" And I'm like, if we win this game. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah, if I get you in 2 more games and we win all 3, then I'll consider it. But yeah, no, thank you for hanging out. And
Thanks for having us. And on your birthday, no
And
less.
on my birthday, no
You
less.
hosted us
Happy
on your
birthday.
birthday.
On my birthday. In fact, I'm gonna go do dinner soon, and maybe you know what? There's cake right here. I'm gonna eat some cake.
dinner.
I forgot about it. It's just been sitting there. It became a piece of the set to my brain. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. Thanks everyone for watching and asking your questions. And if you didn't, then you can tune in the next time we do a Dev Insight, or just ask your questions wherever they have it. Again, they're active everywhere, as we have just learned. So that even if it doesn't get answered, it's getting in the brain.
Yep.
So that's what matters most. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the birthday wishes. And we'll see you next time.
Peach it.